Delivery drivers of Reddit, what's the most, what the heck, or hilariously awkward thing you've walked in on while dropping something off? Had a large order of pizzas going to a conference room of a hotel. Nothing too out of the ordinary until I opened the door and approximately 500 pugs turned their heads simultaneously at the man who just brought in yummy-smelling food to the pug owners' convention. I left and proceeded to have a good laugh. On the other end of the spectrum, there was a guy who ordered and was waiting on his porch steps when I got there. Couldn't help but notice his balls hanging out of his shorts. I left and proceeded to bleach my eyes. Story 2. Used to be a pizza guy in my younger years. Weirdest thing that I ever encountered was delivering some pizzas to an older, larger lady who used a walking stick. She had her grandson over for dinner. She opened the door, I read out the order, she gave me some winks, paid, then said, "You're getting me as hot as these pizzas. Do you want to come in?" I stuttered a no, and her grandson, looking horrified, quietly said, "Damn grandma." Story 3. Back when I was like 23, one time I was delivering alcohol and a lady in a bathrobe opened the door. An older woman, very pretty though. She started acting kind of flirty. I smiled and just handed her the bag. Then she asked, "Don't you need to see my ID?" And I was like, "Nope, all good." Her smile dropped. I realized what I had done. I think she needed a win that day. I felt bad enough that I remember it about 6 years later. Oops. Story 4. Back when I was 13, I had a paper route. In the UK, 99% of houses have a letter flap on the front door, and we would post the newspapers through the door. One day, I had to cover another kid's route, and when I went to post the paper through one door, it just wouldn't go through. Normally, I'd just leave it hanging out of the door, but it wouldn't even go in enough to stay there, and I thought I'd get in trouble if I left it outside the door. I opened the flap to see what was blocking it. It was a junk. The guy liked to put his junk in the letter flap when he knew the paper boy was coming. I never did that route again and even quit altogether a few weeks later. I did speak to the kid that usually did that route, and he said that's normal, but the guy would regularly give him tips, so he was okay with it. I really wish I'd reported it at the time, but I was a kid and was scared I'd lose my job or get in trouble some other way. Story 5. I'm not a delivery driver in any paying capacity, but my neighborhood is really close-knit, so we act as delivery drivers for each other whenever it's needed. One of the guys in my neighborhood who lives a couple of blocks over is an MMA fighter, semi-professionally, and all-around nice guy. He has 3 daughters with his ex-wife in a shared custody arrangement, and loves them to pieces. He asked me to grab the takeout order he'd gotten for the girls and him for dinner on my way home. My practice is literally a block away from the restaurant, so it wasn't a huge deal. I texted him when I got there, and he told me to just come on in. When I walked into the foyer, I beheld one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I should give you a description of him so you get an idea of what he looks like. He's 6 feet 3 inches, somewhere around 250 pounds. Muscular, jacked guy with a beard. In the living room, he and his daughters are having a tea party after playing dress-up. The girls had done his makeup, braided his beard, and he was dressed in a Glinda, the Good Witch type dress. Yes, it was pink, and yes, it was in his size. It was so unexpected that it was hilarious to me, and I burst out laughing. He didn't take offense because he realized how funny it looked to walk in on that. It was just so incongruous to what I expected that it bordered on the absurd to me in the moment. There's a sweet postscript for this moment. We had a neighborhood BBQ the next Thursday night, and over a few beers, we got talking about it. He offhandedly mentioned that I should see his Ariel from the Little Mermaid costume. It turns out that he owns matching, or as close as possible, dresses, costumes to his daughter's dress-up clothes. I've seen the whole closet he has dedicated to it. That's one of the most wholesome things I've ever encountered in hindsight. Story 6. I delivered pizzas while I was at uni. On my very first night, working the job, I got a delivery to a place pretty close to the pizza shop, walking distance, and was really trying to work out why. I knocked on the door with the pizza and a completely naked man answered. He couldn't cover himself up fast enough and was extremely embarrassed. Turns out the woman I worked alongside was his wife, and the only delivery driver up till this point. I actually ended up as pretty good friends with both of them. We still catch up regularly. Anytime pizza is planned, mentioned at all, I make the better whip your junk out mate joke. Story 7. I used to deliver propane in northern Michigan. I was doing a delivery to the staff building of a hotel where Jamaican women normally stay during the vacation seasons. I walked into the side door to get a signature for the delivery, and there stood 4 topless women. I blushed, turned my back, and started to quickly apologize. Then I heard an older woman laughing, and she said, "What's the matter, boy? Haven't you ever seen boobies before?" I told my boss about it when I got back. He laughed his ass off. Story 8. Had a guy answer the door and nothing but a sock on his dangle, acted like it was totally normal. Took his money and left without even mentioning it. Another time had a woman at the door, hiding behind mostly, who I'm 90% confident was being ducked. Story 9. Used to work for a small courier service, mostly meds and legal docs. One night I'm dropping off an envelope at this guy's apartment. Doors cracked open, lights are red inside. Not dim red, like horror movie red. I knock, say, "Delivery for James." From inside I hear, "Come in. It's feeding time." Dead serious. I noped out so hard I nearly left skid marks in the hallway. Called dispatch and made them mark it undeliverable. Next day the guy calls and goes, "Sorry about the Dracula vibe. I was setting up for my tarantula's TikTok live stream." I don't even know what part disturbs me more. The fact that he said it so casually or that the tarantula apparently had fans. Story 10. This one is a bit sad but very surreal. Not a delivery driver, but worked as an ambulance. Got called to an apparent heart attack. Really nice apartment building in an also very nice part of town. We go up 2 sets of stairs, and there is an open door flanked with 2 naked people that gesture inside. Inside the flat, I would guess about 100 square meters, soft jazz music is playing, and the whole flat is full of naked people in an age range from about 20 to 60. All just standing around. I would guess about 50 people, at least. In the middle of the living room lies a 60-year-old guy getting CPR from 2 naked dudes. We take over, do our thing. Guy sadly is obviously gone. Machine says no shock. We do CPR anyways and carry him away. All while the music is playing and 50 naked people stare at us not saying a word. That was at about 2 in the afternoon BTW. No clothes visible in the whole flat. And nobody even tries to cover themselves or even leave. Guess he went the way he lived. Story 11. I used to work supermarket home delivery in the UK. I had my regulars who I used to deliver to every weekend on my shifts, including a lovely old man who we'll call John. John lived in an upmarket retirement apartment assisted living facility in a small leafy village in the countryside. He was probably in his mid-90s and would always leave a note on the order to knock on his door, then come in to put the shopping in the kitchen for him. When I arrived, he'd just shout, "Come in!" and I'd open the front door. Usually he'd be sat upright in his wheelchair in the living room or lying in his bed reading a book. One day, I went along to deliver John's food shop as normal, buzzing myself in on the intercom at the front doors and wheeling my sack barrow with the crates of shopping around the corridors till I got to John's apartment at the end of the corridor on the top floor. I noticed when I parked the sack barrow outside the front door that the door wasn't closed like normal, it was ajar. I knocked anyways and heard John say his usual, "Come in," so I proceeded to pick up the first 3 or 4 bags of shopping and open the front door. It's important to note here that John's bathroom was immediately on the left side as you came into his small retirement apartment. As soon as I got through the front door, I saw to the left that the bathroom door was fully open, with John sat in his wheelchair naked, as the day he was born facing the doorway. His assisted living carer was there to give him his daily shower, I guess, and was midway through scrubbing his balding head as I walked through. Everything was out on show. I was quite shocked, not expecting to see a fully nude bloke in his 90s at 8 in the morning, but out of British politeness, I just said, "Oh, morning, John. Still want the shopping left in the kitchen?" And he said, "Yes, please, mate." So I continued as normal, trying not to look across into the bathroom every time I had to go back to the sack barrow to collect more shopping bags. At the end of the delivery, I asked John if it was all right if I signed for the delivery on his behalf, as I could see he was a bit preoccupied with his shower. It was never mentioned again on the subsequent deliveries I took to John till I eventually quit the job a year or so later. Story 12. Not necessarily walked in on, but the most hilarious thing I'd laid eyes on at that job. "Knock on this guy's door," he answers. I scan the parcel. I hadn't looked at the name on it yet, but when it scanned through, the device said it was addressed to Big Junk Dave. Could not hold in my laughter, so showed the bloke too and said unique name, so he bursts out laughing as well. Went as red as a tomato. Explained that his mate gets things delivered to his house because he works abroad a lot and puts a new daft name on every delivery. Story 13. I delivered live orchids for a greenhouse as a part-time job. They had to be physically handed to the customers because I was not allowed to leave them outside at all. One place I went to was way out off the main roads, which is saying something because I live in an extremely rural area. My normal grocery trip is half an hour just to get to the closest store. Anyway, I find the address and the driveway disappears into a forest, and it's a good half a mile of gravel twists before I see the house. It's dug into the side of a hill, looking over a private lake. Like there's just a dark hallway going back into the dirt. No windows, no doors, no visible structure. Just a concrete rectangular tunnel into darkness. I had called the customer beforehand because I learned the hard way that cold delivery means I'm driving back with flowers and wasting time and gas. So I just shouted, "Hello, delivery from Greenhouse," and stood there kind of taking in the scenery. I shouted again and this time got a response. The guy pokes his head out from a door that I swear was not there when I pulled up. About halfway down the tunnel, like he just popped out of the shadows and goes, "Oh, hey there, I didn't hear you pull up. Here you pull." I hold up the orchid and explain he has to sign for it, and he's like, Sure, and steps out of the darkness to reveal he is complete naked and covered in mud, brown paint, I have no idea, just swinging free, and dripping gooey brown sludge as he walks out into the sunlight to take his delivery. Leaves a huge brown smudge on the invoice and says, "You want to come in for a beer?" Even if I didn't have to drive way back out of there, no way in hell was I going into the concrete tunnel of darkness with Nudie Mudman. Nope. Story 14. Work as a postal carrier, and back around 2014, Amazon started their Amazon Sunday delivery service with the USPS. This was a time when Sunday delivery wasn't a thing like it is now. People would do a double take or stop us on Sunday inquiring if we were doing, or straight up call the cops thinking someone stole our signature box truck. Anyways, I was walking a package up to the door of a secluded upper-class home, and a woman called out a guy's name from the garage, walked casually out naked, saw me, and screamed. She screamed. I screamed. Someone who I assumed was her husband bolted from somewhere and saw me, yelling who the heck I was, while I was yelling I'm a letter carrier. Was stuck there for at least 15 minutes trying to show them my credentials. The fact that I'm in a mail truck and had a package addressed to him. To this days, I can't get the image of those out of my head. Story 15. I delivered to a hotel, and a lady answered the door in a very skimpy outfit. From inside the room, I hear a guy yell, "Hurry up! That's not what I'm paying you to put in your mouth." Story 16. I used to deliver off-site catering for a deli, mostly chicken parm hot trays and Six of Heroes, that kind of thing. Well, it wasn't usual for people to send food to homes after funerals and such. One day, I was sent to a funeral. It was a lot of food for a funeral, like $600 worth of food. So get the house, and it is absolutely packed with beautiful people, and a good percentage of them are laughing and sunning topless by the pool. I should add that this wasn't some huge mansion in the Hamptons. This was a middle-class home in Massapequa. Almost all of the guests at this part were all under 35, and they were all having a blast. I thought to myself, maybe this isn't a funeral, but there was the memorial picture easel with, "You'll be missed in the living room." Most bizarre funeral I have ever seen. But God, I hope mine is like that. Everyone I know celebrating the life they had with me. Either that or the dude was a total banana and they were celebrating. Story 17. I was a pizza delivery driver for a few months a while back. Had a couple open the door for me, him in just his boxers, her in just her bra and a bright pink thong. They were both really sweaty, and it was obvious that I interrupted their fun time. The girl told me I was earlier than expected and smiled. That couple ordered a few more times after that, every time opening the door in underwear, hers getting more revealing every time. After the third time, they asked me if I wanted to join them after I'm done working. I declined because I was in a relationship at the time, but still think about that sometimes. Story 18. Worked for Domino's for some years. A lot of people tried to tip me with substances. One dude gave me an unopened vibrator. Here's a few stories. I take this dude his food. He calls me by my name. I'm like, crap's crazy. He's like, I can see the name online. I'm like, okay, cool. I in turn call him by his name. Funny for no reason. We talk about nothing. Some shows, some games, whatever. Dude seems cool. As I'm leaving, he asks for my last name. It pops out of my mouth without any thought. The next day, he adds me on FB. Tom about we should hang out maybe. Same age, similar interest it seems. Can never have too many friends, so I'm like, all right, we go to Applebee's. Dude has a daughter and his wife just passed. He watched her pass, but he's a firefighter. Paramedic, so it didn't bother him as much as it would a normal person. Weird. I'm slick, thinking he hit his wife. We talk about more nothing and leave. I tell my girlfriend and she's like, oh, he's gay. I don't think so. He has a kid and was married. She insists he's gay. Don't hear from him for a while. Eventually, he start messaging me, come hang out. Nah. Decider he's not worth my time, but every so often I get a come hang out text. After some months, it transitions into crap like, it won't take long. What won't take long? Nothing. Just come hang out. Just talk. I'm like, we talk in RN. This goes on for months. Then it gets even more weird. Come hang out, it won't take long. What won't take long? You know, I don't know. Until one day, he sends me an emoji of two dudes holding hands. I'm like, crap, he is gay. I tell him that I'm going to take this as a compliment, but I'm into girls. He responds, money? I ended up blocking him after crap continued to get more weird. I refused to deliver there for the rest of the time I worked there. He was a lot bigger than me and could have taken my cheeks against my will if he tried to. Weirdest one was an order in a shady part of town. Said use the back door. I get there and the front door is inaccessible because of how much stuff is on the porch, so I uneasily go around back. Back door is open. 3 of the fattest people I've ever seen and one really skinny dude. The most trash I've seen in a house. Something straight out of Hoarders. I can't remember what they were talking about, but I do remember that it was sexual in nature. This skeeved me out because who I assumed was the daughter was not wearing pants and was sitting right next to the dad. Unpleasant and unnerving all around. One girl asked me if I'd be her next baby daddy. I'm like, nah, I'm good. She doesn't tip. Her mother is there and says, you aren't going to tip him? Girl responds with, I tried to tip him with this booty, but he didn't take it. Okay. Dude answers the door in a towel. I think nothing of it. He begins to close the door, but opens it back up and says something like, NGL, I'm naked under this towel. I was beating cheeks before you got here. I got 2 bad girls back there, and it's slick too much for me to handle. You want to come smash? You can pick what one you get. I politely declined. I go into a hotel room of middle-aged men drinking and smoking. Like 6 dudes in a room. They watching tennis and getting hype. One of them asks me if I like Venus or Serena more. I say, I don't know, I don't follow tennis like that. He says, you a tit guy? I'm like, yes, I guess. You like Serena then? The whole room is overly hype after that. Was a positive experience. Not weird really, but was neat. Ticket says I need to yell, this is Sparta, if I want a tip. Dude answers. I'm like, you want me to scream it, scream it. He's like, hell yeah, all you've got. We're in an apartment building, so I ask if we can go outside. We do. I put my back and my balls into it and yell, this is Sparta, as loud as I can. Dude tells me that was awesome and hands me $20. Last one, delivering a pizza to one of the more shady apartment complexes. I go to walk up the stairs, and there's a dude at the bottom who's giving me sword vibes. We didn't really interact, but something seemed off. I ascend the stairs and knock on the door. A woman answers and tells me she didn't order anything. I confirm her address. I'm at the right spot, but she hasn't ordered. Okay, guess it's time to go. I descend the stairs, and Weirdo is still there. I get a bad feeling, so I start walking quickly. I can hear him walking behind me, and he's getting faster as I get faster. I end up running the last couple of paces, get in my car, and lock the door. Dude is banging on my window with one hand and aiming at me with the other. His hand was in his hoodie, so I'd wager he was bluffing, but crap was still scary. Story 19. I delivered a package to a house and needed a direct signature, so I rang the bell. The front of the house has a lot of windows, so I could see her excitedly running to the door, but she was naked. When she answered the door, she was very disappointed and said, I thought you were someone else. Story 20. I've been doing DoorDash on the side for about 4 years now. Fortunately, I live in a decent enough area that I don't have too many WTF or NSFW moments. I've had a few times, where I've handed orders through half-underground basement windows to someone who didn't want me going to the front door. Usually kids who aren't supposed to be ordering. One time was a girl who looked 16, around 10:30 p.m., who asked me to not ring the doorbell or knock. Pretty common request. I pull up and it's a nice, big place. And as I'm walking up to the main door, which is just some kind of decorative glass that you can kind of see through, I see the girl kneeling on the floor just inside with each arm wrapping around a different dog and holding their snouts shut to keep them from barking. I set the food down, and just as I'm getting back into my car, I hear a commotion. The dogs are both running outside in the yard and barking up a storm, and she's running after them, quietly yelling, trying to get them back inside. I just started backing out of the driveway, having to stop whenever one of the dogs ran around my car, but made it out. As I drove off down the street, she was still chasing them around outside. Always wondered if she got into trouble with her parents, or if they slept through that. Another time, a little more unnerving. I delivered to 2 girls who looked like high schoolers. I'm not huge on eye contact, but usually just try to be polite while handing food over. One of the girls asked if I liked the other girl's shirt. I thought she was asking about some design or graphic, but when I actually gave a glance, I saw that it was just a thin, sheer black top that I could see through as she did a little pose for me. I just muttered something about it being nice and averted my gaze and noped out of there. But one of my favorite amusing times was when I delivered to a nursing home. It was around 7:30 p.m. and I had to get let in. There were 2 ladies in electric scooters, wheelchairs hanging out in the lobby, and one let me in. But she didn't want to let me wander the halls alone, and she knew the lady I was delivering to. So she said she'd lead me up to the room. She caught me off guard with how fast she drove her scooter around the building. I was practically having to jog to keep up with her as she cut corners and zipped around like she was driving for NASCAR. On the way up, she commented that she was grateful for the distraction because it was so quiet. I asked, being a Friday evening, "Oh, people go out for dinner a lot at this time with family and such." And she gave a huge laugh and just said, "Dinner? It's after 7. Half the building is asleep already." Then there was a time I had to deliver to these really shady apartments. The main door to the building had no lock to get in. It had a place where a lock was supposed to be put in, but it was just an open hole. So I let myself in and knocked on the unit's door because it was a hand-it-to-me order. I had to knock a couple times because the TV inside was so loud I could clearly hear cartoon sounds from whatever was being watched. When someone finally answered, they aggressively yanked the door open just enough to stick their head out, and the guy angrily asked, "What do you want?" And I just held up the food and said, "Delivery." And the guy snatched it out of my hand and slammed the door, and I heard him yell over the loud TV, "Who the heck ordered DoorDash?" Figured a kid got a hold of the phone or something. On a positive note, though. One time I delivered a single Firehouse sub to a guy that was only like a 3-mile drive. Already nice and short with a decent tip on it. But after I dropped it off, they added another $20 to the tip. I was grateful, but also very confused. Story 21. I remember one Halloween I was doing deliveries. Nothing was new except it was a night full of candy and odd costumes. I had a pretty large pizza delivery to this apartment complex near a college campus. So as you do when a delivery boy, I grabbed the drinks and bagged them up, and then put the pizzas in the pizza bag. I arrived to the apartment complex and could see the people's decorations on the porch, blah blah. I walked up to the door, knocked, and an absolute unit of a darker skinned guy dressed as Freddy from Scooby-Doo opens the door. Dude had dreads, A little facial hair, had to be at least 6'5", and was built like a pencil. He greets me and then turns around and yells, "Hey, yo gang, our pizza is here!" I cracked up laughing when everyone came running. The dude dressed as Shaggy had to be his twin brother, because once again an absolute monster tall guy, 6 feet 3 inches, dreads, and built like a pencil. A girl came out as Daphne, her outfits was see-through. A girl came dressed as Scooby, her outfit was also see-through, and lastly, a came dressed as Velma girl, again also see-through in an extremely short red skirt. She hurried past the crew, turns around in front of the door and said, "Oh no, Mr. Delivery Boy, I dropped my glasses." "Yo." She turned around and flipped up her little red skirt and dude. It was like flashing different colors. After that, our mystery-solving homie Fred came to her and said, "All right, that's enough with you. I'll deal in the room. Keep in mind this all happened in about 3 minutes of me opening the door." He said to me, "All right, lil homie, here's your tip. You have a good rest the night." He let out a laugh, handed me $30, a little bag of the substances, smacked Velma on the ass, picked her up, and then everyone rushed to shut the door on me. Story 22. I once delivered plumbing supplies for a pretty big national company in the UK. I knocked on the door and was greeted by a lady, probably mid-30, but looked a lot older, rough paper round, I think. She answered the door with nothing but a bathrobe on. I passed the parcels to her. She put them down just inside the door, and every time she bent down, she flashed me her tits. I tried not to look, but was kind of hard not to. She then says, "Ooh, like what you see," with a huge smirk on her face. "No, thank you. Please sign for your parcels, and I'll be on my way," I said. I got home, and my GF, now wife, said to me, "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I still don't think I have recovered 8 years on. Story 23. I know a food delivery driver who dropped off an order recently, and the woman who answered the door said, "Thanks, I am so high," and then looked mortified as she realized the last part was not an internal thought. Story 24. Dropped off a package at a friend's house. It took him several minutes to reach the door. Turns out he'd been camping at the backyard and his sleeping bag zipper jammed. So it took him a while to wriggle to the front door and answer the doorbell in the guise of a giant green slug. Story 25. Worked as a courier for 4 years roughly. Have many stories, some shorter, some longer. I remember rolling up to a small house with the second floor windows open. You could hear a couple having a lot of fun up there. Unfortunately, I also had a package to be delivered. So I ring the doorbell. A minute later, after the sounds quiet down, a shirtless guy pops his head out the top window. I show him the package. He says, "Just a sec." I'll runs downstairs. Opens the door and nothing but a towel, signs for it, and I get going. I wasn't waiting around to hear if the fun continued, but definitely made me chuckle. Story 26. Not a driver anymore, but a supervisor for industrial laundry company. One of my drivers had an early morning delivery to a motel owned by an elderly woman. We owed her some sheets and pillowcase due to a shortage in the previous day's delivery. And early next morning was our only time frame back in the area to make it up. We worked that out with her. She answered the door at 6:30 a.m. naked, told our driver that if he ever showed up that early again, she would hit him. Took her delivery, and that was that. Story 27? I doper dashed in the winter for about 5 months, and I had quite a few NSFW experiences. The first few that come to mind are, 1. Get a double order from Papa John's late at night. The first one, a good tip, and the second one is a single item, breadsticks or something. It says it was a claimed reward and no tip. First order goes fine. I get to the second place, and there's like 3 houses right next to each other on this tiny block with no address numbers. Oh, go up to the wrong house. Big, husky, strong lady, think Ms. Trunchbull from Matilda, comes around the corner with 2 giant German shepherds that are barking and snarling and going crazy trying to jump at me. Lady is holding them back and asks me, "Who are you looking for?" I say the customer's name. She says, "You must have the wrong place." She was very nice, and I apologized for the inconvenience. Scary. It gets worse, though. Go to the next house, and it's a hand it to me, start the 5 minutes timer. Before I can leave when there's no answer, I'm calling and texting the guy, and he won't come to the door. Finally, after like 4 mins, he comes to the door. He looks like total addict. I hand him the breadstick things. And he starts yelling about how he ordered a pizza, and he didn't order this crap. I say, "Sorry, you can get a refund in the app. I'm just a driver, and I can't control that." He definitely ordered what I handed to him. I start walking away, and he says, "Someone ought to teach you guys a lesson." I report everything to DoorDash, but they don't do anything or care. They got rid of the 1 star he left me, and that's it. 2. I'm delivering pizza to this apartment at like 2:30 a.m. on a Friday. Girl in her mid-20s, pretty good looking, opens the door with just a towel covering her. I hand her the pizza, and she just drops the towel, completely naked underneath. She says, "Sorry about that," takes the pizza and closes the door. I am not a good-looking guy at all, so 99% sure this was an accident. 3. I'm delivering some sort of food, can't remember what to this house. Pull up outside and get out. It's a hand-it-to-me order. Walk up to the house, and I see this older lady stand up with nothing on. Not the kind of older lady you want to see naked either. She then comes to the door after putting clothes on and gets mad at me for not calling her before I got here, like she put on the app. I didn't see this beforehand. Left me a 1 star. 4. Super good-looking gal answers the door in a plain white t-shirt that's completely see-through. No bra. No shorts or pants, just underwear. Takes the food, says thanks, and goes back inside like it was completely normal. 5. Get a Taco Bell order at like 2 a.m. Go to the guy's house. It's a hand it to me. He messaged me saying, "If I don't answer, keep calling me until I do. I probably fell asleep." Well, sure enough, I had to call him like 12 times before he answered. Guy, probably about 20. 25 came to the door with panties on. Balls hanging out of the side of the panties. Takes the food, says thanks, and goes back in. I've had a few other odd deliveries and stuff, but this is all I can really remember enough to write a story about. Story 28. Appliance installer here. I was delivering a dishwasher and I called the customer before heading there. The person I called was a man, the husband, and he informed me that he is at work, but his wife will be at the house for the install. I arrive at the house. I ring the doorbell. No answer. I ring it a few more times. I start knocking on the door. Eventually, the wife answers the door. Completely messy hair, sweaty. And you can tell she found the nearest dress and slipped it on with nothing underneath. As I'm talking to her, another man wearing a tank and shorts is walking down the stairs, and the first thing he says to her was, "So how was your trip to Colorado?" She starts laughing and proceeds to introduce me to her brother. Then he walks out through the garage and disappears. Safe to say they looked nothing alike. For example, she was a blonde and he had black hair. She was probably having an affair while her husband was at work. Story 29. I worked for a small delivery service years ago in my early 20s. It was mostly legal documents between firms, but we had some bigger clients too, namely big clothing retailers. This is important for later. Late one afternoon, I was asked to drop off a random box on my way home. I was in a rougher part of town, warehouse district. Sun was going to set soon, and it also wasn't my usual area. I first pushed back a bit, hesitant to deliver because of the circumstances, but eventually gave in and did it. Made it to the drop-off just before sunset in a dark warehouse lot. The only lights in this parking area were some dim lights over most of the doors, some lights out, barely lighting the numbers on the doors that actually had numbers. One random door had a bouncer wearing all black and a wire in his ear. Based on the package address, I deduced that was the delivery drop-off location. I parked a good distance away just in case and shouted at the guy from afar, I think I have a package for you." He responded, "Who do you work for?" So I tell him. He goes, "1 minute, it'll be right back." Well, by the time he got back, the sun is actually set. And at this point, and I'm sweating bullets, he comes back out with another bouncer dude and says, "Grab your package and come in. The boss is waiting for you." It's worth noting at this point, the service I work for requires a signature from the customer that placed the order due to legal reasons. So I actually need the boss's signature for protocol reasons. The compliance part of my brain is like, okay, get in, get the signature, and get the hell out. Just in case, pretend you didn't see anything. So I carefully get the package, walk up to the door, and get ready to go in. The main bouncer says, "We will need to escort you for safety reasons." I'm practically shaking at this point with fear, but I'm already committed. The first step in is a long, dark hallway, and I hear very loud music in the back area. Finally, we go inside under this thick black curtain to the brightest lit warehouse I've ever witnessed. With Right Said Fred's "I'm Too Hot" playing over some loudspeakers. Inside, I see most gorgeous women I've ever seen in real life walking around in lingerie, getting their picture taken. I stop for a moment to take it all in, all while the bouncer's laughing at me at how dumbfounded I probably look. I eventually make it to the boss after posing multiple sets, drop the package off, and get the signature. I had the widest grin on my face the whole time that I couldn't hide. The part of my brain saying you didn't see anything took a back seat as I took it all in. The boss's assistant opens the package to check the inventory and turns out it was more lingerie-looking clothes. The assistant just waves her hands at me to shoo me away, and I causally walk back out with the bouncers. The head guy on the way out was like, "It's quite the sight to see, huh? No one will ever believe you if you tell them." I was so dumbfounded when I got back to the car, confirmed the package was dropped, and told dispatch, "If you ever need anything dropped off here again, I want to be first to know." I never got to go back after that, but I'll never forget that magical moment. Story 30. When I was 10, I did a paper round. I was riding down an alley where the residents had their garages. A garage door was open and a woman was bent over looking for something under the front seat with just a bathrobe on. It was the first time I'd seen a cat in the wild. I was shocked by how much hair, but I suppose it was the 1970s. Story 31. Knocked on the door. She tells me to come in. Go in, and she calls me into her bedroom. It smells. Bedroom is trashed, garbage clothes. She's probably 40-something. Little rough looking, tells me she's bedridden despite moving every limb. Sounds crazy. Asked me to get her a soda from her closet like 4 feet away from her. Dim lights. I'm wearing prescription sunglasses. can barely see. It smells worse. Closet filled with brand new sealed iPad, headphones, junk food, more electronics, about 6 cases of soda, and about 20 cases of adult diapers. Packed to the brim with all that and more. Tells me she is bedridden. Tells me her boyfriend left on Mon. Doesn't know where he went or if he's coming back. It's Fry. She's friendly, but I can tell she's got a screw loose just from like 20 seconds of conversation. Asks me to hand her a pack of diapers along with her soda. Whatever. Asks me, pleads with me to take her garbage out because it's been weeks. I can tell. It smells. Whatever. I'm just thinking at this point maybe good tip money. Plus, this lady isn't all there. And if she's telling the truth, at least I could help her a little bit, right? She directs me to her side of the bed opposite the door and closet where I've been until now. It damn smells. Just gather this little bit here and take it all out. Thank you so much. You're so sweet. Thank you, thank you. I move the top layer and the smell hits hard. A mountain of dirty adult diapers. Crap-covered papers. Crap-covered clothes. Crap-covered carpet. Bob Saget Dumb and Dumberer. There is crap everywhere. I worked at Kennel for years. I've cleaned up the most nasty-smelling, rank crap you can imagine. Dogs have no shame. I decide to go for it. Big tip. I power through about 2 or 3 before one splits and spills even more crap everywhere. Now I just want to get the duck out of there. I'm starting to feel sick. My heart is racing. I'm dizzy. The smell, the crap's getting to me. No pun. I look. 2 or 3 down, like 45 to go. I'm not going to make it. I'm going to puke. What the heck is that? Not a diaper. She's not too old to menstruate. I'm done. I drop everything and literally jump back and ask to use her restroom to wash up. I run to it, not waiting for an answer. It looks abandoned. Rusty toilet. Covered in old garbage and magazines. More dirty diapers. I nope out of it all together and run to my car. Found out later she tipped on credit card. $2. Story 32. Had a lady open the door in a really revealing bra to get her food while I was taking a picture. Last week I had some text the app number. Want to see my cat? To me. Story 33. I got a few. Mostly involve nudity. Most of that not good. And 2 always come to mind. Delivering pizzas in college, got an order for 20 pizzas delivered in 2 batches of 10. The house was rocking and 60 music could be heard clearly down the block. Dropped off the first 10 and went back for the second 10. When I got back with the second order, house was quiet. No music. Most of the lights were off. I knock and a man opens the door to get them. And everyone is in various stages of nudity. Just talking. Nothing sexual. Just talking. They tipped me like 200% and asked for discretion. Fast forward a few years and I'm working in its sales and service. This was back in the early aughts when custom desktops and 17 inches CRT monitors were the rage. Had a walk-in customer, big burly biker type, order 5 PCS, a bunch of peripherals, but only 1 monitor. He also wanted delivery and setup, but requested that it was me because I seemed cool. He then gave me a gram of weed. A week later, I make the appointment for setup and he lives in basically a biker clubhouse. Think SOA. Main floor stinks like stale beer and cigars, and there are a few passed out people 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, most in various stages of undress. He tells me they had a party last night and leads me upstairs, to what I can only describe as a film studio. I set up the machines attached them to a video switcher, and how to import the video from his cameras and set up the various webcams. While we're finishing up, 2 women in silk robes walk in, and he introduces me to his wife and girlfriend. It's clear they do not want me around. He ushers me out and gives me an ounce of weed and some hash. He ended up being a repeat customer for years. Story 34. I delivered pizzas in college. One Halloween, I took an order to this guy's house. He opened the door and handed me a phone and said, just go with it. His GF was going to call, and he was going to prank her by pretending to be dead or something. It all happened really fast. I didn't know what to think, so my brain went, she's probably used to it. So I took the phone and talked to her. I said something like, hi, is this someone who knows this guy? I'm a delivery guy. I just got here and the guy's on the floor. She made a noise like that. Instant regret. She freaked out, started telling me to do CPR, check his pulse. Keep him alive till I get there, that kind of stuff. She said she was calling 911. The dude was making hand gestures at me, so I said, you might want to wait on that until you get here. So she gets home. The dude's like, gotcha, ha 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 ha. Woman is standing there with puffy eyes and a wet face. I'm finally able to speak and say something like, I'm so sorry. I thought maybe it was a thing you guys did. She said I was fine. She knew it was all him. The dude let me out, insisted on putting a tallboy Bud Light in my hand for my trouble. Delivery driver. I never ended up drinking it, 1 because Bud Light, you, and 2 BC, I didn't deserve a reward for that. Even thinking of the sound she made then, like over 10 years ago now, still makes my breath catch. I still can't believe I did that. On a more positive note, I am way less likely to do anything described as just go with it because of this. I have other stories, but they're pretty much just X happened. Nothing fun. Trust me, very disappointing for college me. Story 35. One night, I get a delivery to an upstairs apartment. Very generous tip on the order, and the business I worked at was known for being speedy. I get there in about 5 minutes. Shirtless gentleman answers the door. He's looking exactly like the Adderall, glass of wine, diesel jeans guy. Hand him his order with a big smile, and he hits me with, "Have you ever been naked on camera?" First words out of his mouth. I was 19 at the time and told him not yet. But if the money was better than what I was making, I'd consider it and left as fast as I could. Another time I get a delivery to a clinic of some sort. I talk with the front desk lady, tell her who the order is for, etc. I realize I had forgotten the drink for the order and told the secretary I would be right back with it. She had told me that she'd absolutely love me if I could bring back a pickle for her. The owner of my shop was strict, and I told her I'd try my best. I arrived back with the drink. No pickle, unfortunately. And the secretary said, "Oh, did you bring my pickle for me? Or is it in your pocket once again?" I was 19, and there were people in the waiting room, so I just turned red and left. Took a shift at location in the city, got shot at, maybe not aimed at me, but heard the bullets whiz so definitely too close for comfort. Ducked between some cars. Finally dropped off the order, no tip. Another drunk dude tipped $40 later that night, so it was worth it. Had one family that would always order and never tip, always pay in cash to really rub it in. Would pay the next dollar up, send their kids out to pay. Anything to just really shaft our drivers. We never retaliated. No napkins, straws, extra ice, etc. One night their total came to about $14. And they messed up. They only had a $20 and sent out the adult. We make the swap, and I tell him to have a nice night and walk back to my car, while he's standing there trying to call out to me. That was a few days before my last day there, and it felt so damn good. Story 36? Well, in my 10-year stint of delivering pizza, I'm tied between the two escorts in an old man's house with a bunch of high school kids staring from across the street playing basketball, and the weekend party house of dudes in their underwear offering me a BJ as a tip. Story 37. I carried a 300-pounds rug through a too small elevator shaft and then up and down some stairs to have the recipient refuse the delivery because there was a hole in the rug. It was invisible, and I never saw it. As we were flipping the rug out, she noticed and told me to throw it away. I told her that was not something I was willing to do. She called down to the front office and told them the rug was mine now. She then got on the line and had a new rug sent, free of charge. I still didn't see the hole. I dragged that rug back to the basement and told my boss. She told me to throw it away. He asked if I wanted it. I said, "Okay." We went out and looked at the crate it came in. There was an almost imperceptible slit in the top of the crate just under where the crossmember went. I checked it to the rug and it matched. Whoever transferred the rug between trucks punctured the crate and rug and maybe didn't realize I still have and use this rug. We looked it up and it is between $5,000 and $2,009. Now it just keeps my garage nice in the winter. The hole got bigger, but the cost stayed the same. Story 38? Not a delivery, but I worked multifamily pest control. Was in training, signed in at the office as usual, got the list of apartments to stop at. Business as usual. Pull up to the back end of the property and get told by my trainer to grab lots of sticky traps and extra spray. Think nothing of it at the time. We knock a few times, announcing pest control. No answer. We proceed. You use the keys provided by the office to open and walk inside. My trainer is cautious and moving inside slowly. I assume due to making sure we're not startling or walking in on someone unprepared. Nope. As I walk into the entry, I notice the apartment is dark and the light from the door casts a shadow across the wall. But the movement of the shadow is delayed. Like I open the door wider, but the shadow takes a moment to move and settle. Roaches. Hundreds of small German roaches. Walking through the apartment, every nook and cranny, corner and gap is filled with dead and living small little roaches. Takes us nearly 45 minutes to sweep the place and pick up all the sticky traps left before and replace them. So many dead roaches they were falling out of the traps. My trainer mentions to me that these types of roaches will eat each other, and that's why they were all stacked up on each other. The worst part was absolutely walking into what seemed to be a kid's room. Mattress on the floor with an opened laptop just covered in dead roaches. I asked my trainer in the most serious tone we can call CPS, right? He said, "No, we work for the office. It is their property. They have been notified many times." Later, I was called out to the same place a few times, but for the neighbor's apartment. Completely clean and well taken care of, other than the few stray roaches on the wall or in a corner. They tell me they don't understand why they have bugs, that they clean constantly. I just mentioned that it wasn't their fault and might want to talk to the office about moving places. Story 39. I did bicycle delivery for a sub shop franchise in Seattle for nearly a decade and wish I could condense this story, but I can't. Context is key, and I have a lot I'm still trying to unpack on this one. Now, a certain store had picked up traction with 3 different brothels, as we called them, in separate apartments and complexes. Almost always had a tattooed headmistress of 50 accepting delivery. But occasionally, a random younger girl clad in towel would get their sandwich directly, always tipping very well, and it was not uncommon for a John to be already knocking at the apartment's door asking for his girl. One of the girls ordered frequently between one of the adult club and what I assumed was her home address a few blocks away. One day, one of the newly hired bikers comes back with a story of getting late on his delivery run, and he quickly becomes known as Hot a Combo of his real name and antics. Actual story. I was skeptical at first, but months later I end up at her doorstep. She answers in a hoodie sweatsuit and asks how much it was. Now this is one sub, $8 at the time with tax and delivery fee included. So I reply, matter-of-factly that it's $8. She asks me to step inside so she can grab her cash. Of course I do, and she shuts the door behind me, and I wait. I wait for 5 minutes as she searches around her disheveled apartment and into a bedroom, only to come out topless holding a $10 bill and asking another time, how much was that again? Me. $8, her. Or I could do BJ, me, $8, her, pulling down her pants. You sure you don't want to hit it? Me. No, her, flaunting $10 bill. Well, you're no fun. Me. I have a girlfriend, snatches the bill out of her hand, and I'm tons of fun. I proceed to her front door and try to exit and realize that she had locked the deadbolt behind me. I don't think I'll ever experience dread in the same way, but I'm guessing T. Horny will never have a fantasy quite as such, just the same. Story 40. Not a delivery driver, however, in my teens for a summer. I was driving one of those ice cream bikes. Drive around on it. Customers would come out and purchase. I was in some urban neighborhood not too far from where I lived. I was on the job for a few hours and just heard what I thought was a loud glass banging noise. So I started looking around and saw two gals with their shirts over their heads, and both pairs of breasts pressed up against the picture window they had been banging on. Very, very healthy size pairs. I shouted, "Thank you," smiled, and offered them as much ice cream as they could carry. They did not take me up on it and retreated. I just smiled, appreciated the random favor, and went on my way. Story 41. I was a delivery food guy back in college in the very early 2000s. I saw an order for 5 baskets of jalapeno poppers and 1 iced tea, and immediately thought, these guys are going to be drunk. Roll up on my bike to an apartment, and I see the living room's lights seem to be shut off. I knock anyways, and the door flies open. A guy is there with his head totally wrapped up in a big towel with CDS where his eyes are, and he's looking out through the holes in the center of the CDS. He just says, "Did you bring the jalapeno poppers?" And then a voice from inside pipes up, "And the iced tea?" I look inside, and there's a small couch with 3 other guys crammed onto it, all with the same towel headdress on, with a black light as the only illumination. I assure them that I do have their order, and the guy gives me a big paper sack full of change. We only have nickels and dimes to pay you, but I assure you there is a generous gratuity included. I get back to the restaurant and the end of my shift count up all their damn change, and there was indeed a 30% tip that my boss made me take home and change. But whatever. Story 42. I used to do grocery deliveries for a few years, and the 2 incidents that still stand out to me to this day are: 1. Delivered to an elderly couple on my first shift. Was instructed to knock on the door and wait for wife to answer the door. A few minutes go by, and I hear nothing, so I knock again. I hear some mumbling, shuffling of feet, and the front door swings open, revealing an elderly man, trousers and underwear by his ankles. His wife comes bustling in, flustered, and says, "For duck's sake, you know you're not meant to answer the door in the middle of a piss," and then turns to me to explain, "He's blind," as if that was the reason for him answering the door with his trouser down. 2. Delivered to a woman who opened the door, panicked, slammed the door shut, and asked me to wait a few minutes. She opened the door a few minutes later in a dressing gown, asked me to take her shopping through to her kitchen, but avoid looking around when heading down the corridor. Okay, weird, but that's fine. Anyway, I was curious, snuck a look walking past the living room, and caught a glimpse of some very professional-looking camera equipment, soft box lighting, etc., and several naked people stood around. Safe to say I was ushered out of there ASAP. Story 43. Worked as a door-to-door frozen food salesman for about a year when I was 22. It's a rural area, so it was not unusual to go to a farm where you would knock, announce yourself, then go into the house where the family would leave a list and a signed check because everyone is out doing farm crap. One day during the summer, I come to the house, where this is the usual, and after knocking and yelling, I go inside. No one replied as normal, but I could hear music coming from somewhere in the house. Odd, but I figured maybe they accidentally left a radio on or something. I yelled again just to cover my own ass. Well, as I'm getting the list put into my handheld for the total to write out the check, the music suddenly gets louder. I turned to see a door had opened in the living room. Turns out it was the bathroom. Their college-age daughter was home for the summer. She had heard me, thankfully, and decided to come add some things to the list. The only real issue is my brain had stopped working when she came out of the bathroom because she was drop-dead gorgeous, fit as can be, and in nothing but her bra and thong. Apparently, she had gone to the beach. She came right up and stood next to me and so rudely stood right on my jaw, which was dragging on the floor. She clearly thought that was hilarious, so she definitely did not try to give me any room while she looked over the list. It's still the only thing about that job I remember fondly. A couple months later, I was covering a route for a guy who was off for some emergency I don't remember, and I went to the house of an old lady. She opened the door in a bathrobe that she had not bothered to close, and her nipples were making drag marks in the dust on the front step. To this day, it's the shaggiest pair of tits I've ever, and hope to ever, see. Story 44. Wasn't a delivery driver, but I was going door to door taking orders for G's cookies. I think I was 12 or so, and very innocent. At one house, a rather sweaty girl in her teens, wearing only a t-shirt that came down to her knees, opened the door. I saw a shirtless teenage boy behind her. I asked if her parents were home, and she said no. We really weren't supposed to try and sell cookies to anyone but adults, so I said I'd come back when her parents were home. She freaked, said, "No," grabbed the form, ordered a bunch of boxes, barely looking at the form, then closed the door. When it was time for delivery, I went back. Her mom said, "I didn't order cookies." And when I said no, there was a girl here who ordered, called her daughter, who started to say she didn't order anything, saw me, and she looked absolutely horrified. She nervously told her mom something like, "Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you I did that a while ago. I was going to pay for it myself." Rummaged in her purse, shoved some bills at me, took the boxes, whispered softly, "Thank you," and shut the door. It was a couple years later when it hit me. I'd interrupted two horny teens who bought cookies to buy my silence. Story 45. My brother was a pizza delivery driver for a few years. A man ordered a large pizza and tipped $1. When my brother showed up, the door was ajar and a note hung from it. The man had ended his life and wanted my brother to call the cops. Story 46. I was a delivery driver for Best Buy and was delivering a fridge to a very nice house. The owner said she wouldn't be there, but her daughter would be. Her daughter was 19. So we get you the house for the delivery, and two girls answer the door in Bikins. The community has a private lake. They're giggling and dancing around. It didn't take long to realize they were both drunk. They also stated they had been day drinking. We got the old fridge out and had the new one almost in place when I turned around to talk to the girl. I let her know the work was done and warranty stuff and blah, blah, blah. She said okay, and then her friend pulled up her bikini top. Mind you, the friend pulled up the other girl's bikini top. I looked respectfully and then turned away. I grabbed the paperwork, turned around to have her sign it, and her top was still up, and they were both giggling again. She had some very nice boobs. She signed the paperwork and we left. Story 47. Back in my late teens, I worked as a pizza delivery driver for Papa John's. One afternoon, I had a delivery to one of the local adult shops in town. I walked in, went up to the front counter, and told the woman working that I had a pizza for someone named John. She glanced up and said, "Oh, he's in the theater." I paused, confused, and told her I didn't know where that was. She smiled knowingly and said, "It's in the back, behind the blue door. Go ahead. Don't worry, there's only a few people back there. You'll be fine." Her reassurance didn't help much, but I made my way to the door and stepped inside. The room was dark, lit only by a projector, playing an adult movie on the wall. Scattered around were mismatched pieces of furniture, couches, folding chairs, and a table. Right in the middle of the room, a woman was bent over a chair, getting vigorously railed by a man, while another guy, presumably her husband, sat nearby watching quietly. He noticed me come in, held a finger to his lips to shush me, and motioned me over. I awkwardly tiptoed through the scene, placed the pizza on the table as instructed, and saw a 20 bill waiting for me. Just as I turned to leave, the guy doing the plowing casually reached over, flipped open the pizza box, grabbed a slice, and took a bite, never missing a beat. Hands down, the weirdest delivery I ever made. Story 48. Worked pizza delivery back in 2004. I have a few memorable stories. Funniest was delivering to some guys that were clearly high out of their minds, had scrounged up a bunch of coins to pay, and to be nice to me. To make sure they had enough, they had grouped the coins together in $1 groups and then taped all the groups to a big piece of cardboard. They hand me this 1 feet square sheet of cardboard, and I just shrug and say it works for me. There was a regular customer. They was an older lady. I was 19. She was probably late 30s, early 40s, and she'd hit on every male driver. She was reasonably attractive, I guess, but I never took her up on it. There was this house situated off a long dirt road, 2-story. Garage was in the back of the house. There was a note on the front door. They said to go around back and knock on the garage door. I do. The door opens about 3 inches. Someone slides some money out. I slide the pizza under. The door closes and I go on my way. Story 49. I used to deliver pizzas when I was younger. Worked at this place for many years. It's in Northern. I have 2 wild stories. First was in my early years there, still being in high school. There was a back way I liked to take to get back to the restaurant. It went past a crafty apartment complex. At some point going past, I noticed 5 ratchet-ass ladies on the sidewalk next to the apartments. As I drove by, they seemed to be making comments at me. I just ignored it. When I came back for my next order, they were still there. Next thing I know, they all turn around and proceed to do BJ. I have no idea why they did it, but it was funny as duck. Second story, which is still the craziest delivery I ever did. This was in my later years. Got a delivery to a crafty hotel in town. It was a budget host, if you are familiar. Get to the door, knock. They say, come in. Kind of unusual, but okay, I come in. They say, shut the door fast. I do. Then it gets really quiet. All of a sudden, something jumps onto my shoulder. It was a damn lemur. Like that Zaboomafoo MF we watched as kids. Could have been him for all I know. Then it starts to lick my ear and I had no idea what to. Because I had never been in a situation like this before. It then jumps onto the curtains and thrashes the crap out of the room. Best part was the old lady sitting on the bed in a WWE shirt while watching WWE. They tipped well and sent me on my way. Never saw them again. Story 50. Bit of a weird one. I work for a kind of thrift store resale shop in a small town, and we delivered a piano way out in the boonies during a solar eclipse. Me and partner get there near the apex, and they are having a hippie art eclipse watch party. Several people are painting things using vinyl records as canvas. Weirdo vibes. We unload the piano. The customer keeps offering us beer, which we decline. We move piano into house. And the customer says they have some furniture to donate to us if we want to check it out. We follow her through this large, rural commune thing, and she's keeping a few paces ahead of us and rounds a corner. We follow, and it dead ends in a laundry room with a dryer going full tilt with no door, just slinging clothes everywhere. Customer is nowhere to be found. No doors, no windows, no ladders. We call out, don't get a response. We retrace our steps, calling out hello. No answers. We get back outside. The music isn't playing. There are no guests. Everything is a weird overcast amber hue from the eclipse. We spend a half hour walking the grounds calling out, convinced I've entered the twilight zone. No people. No sounds of talking. No wildlife noises. We finally give up and drive back. Weeks later, customer comes back to the store and tips us, thanking us for taking the time to join her party and being so friendly. I ask what happened and where she went, and she has no idea what I'm talking about. She gives me and my partner some vinyl records that are painted on and says that they are paintings we made at the party. Told my boss we'd never do delivery for her again. Story 51. Got an order for 12 crane buildings saying I was only new, so I didn't really know the area, but that didn't exist on Google Maps. I rang the guy in my car and he was fuming. I didn't know where it was because he ordered there every week and told me he was well-known regular. I explained to him that I'm new and he was so stubborn and said to put him onto the restaurant. So I brought the order back in and told the receptionist lady. She had no idea who she was and she was the only girl in there who spoke English. Next he requested the manager and my boss there spoke English. But this guy had a thick Irish traveler accent and he tried to speak to him. He also had no idea who he was. But my boss reckoned the last driver did. So my boss dials the other guy who tells us it's the caravan site building past the football pitch. So I go driving around the football pitch looking for a caravan site and I can't find one anywhere. And I ring the other driver again and he says, no go into site building, which he meant building site. I go into the building site and I still can't find it. So I just ring the guy and tell him I'm a building site with his order. And if he doesn't tell me where he won't get his food. He hangs up and just shouts, hold on from above me. With feet at my eye level, he jumps out of a caravan suspended from a crane with the number 12 on his door. Now I knew where it was for the next 3 years. Story 52. I checked the minibar in a resort room once that a now fairly famous celebrity was holed up in for a few weeks. He gave 0 ducks. His partner was spread eagled naked on the bed without a care in the world. He was naked sitting at the table when he invited me in to restock the fridge. He politely put a shirt on his junk when I came in, but did not give a crap. He'd only made a few movies at the time, but I was a massive fan of his. Still am. Was a cool guy. Had a few good chats over his stay. Clearly some hard substances were involved at the time, but he's had a great career, so he obviously had it under check. Story 53. Delivering car parts to an abandoned lot where a Filipino man was doing repairs on taxis, always pays for parts with stack of cash. Lexus rolls and hot, well-dressed drunk man jumps out passenger side screaming me about why I'm there. Embarrassed wife was driving. Turns out he's the property owner, and he does not approve of ghetto repair lot. Little Filipino mechanic throws me stack of cash and doing his best to brush it off and explain situation to loud drunk property owner. I GTFO out of there in a hurry. Story 54. The craziest was when I delivered to a hotel room, and before I could knock on the door, a giant cop opened it with his finger over his mouth, telling me to be quiet. I saw about 8 cops in the hotel room half-circled around a television screen. He signed for the food, and I started making my way back down the hallway towards the elevator. Halfway down the hallway, I heard a door slam and the distinct sounds of heavy feet running in my direction. I turned around and saw a woman, dressed only in panties, sprinting in my direction as all the officers barreled out of the room after her. One yelled, "Stop! The place is surrounded!" There was nowhere for me to go, besides press my body up against one of the doors to give her clearance, so I didn't get laid out. She was big and built, but was faster than looked humanly possible. She ran down the hallway, which opened up in the center so that you could overlook into the lobby of the hotel, and around the corner. The image of her bare breasts swinging in circles as she sprinted down the hallway will be forever burned in my brain. As I left the hotel, still in shock of what I saw, the person working the front desk told me to have a nice day. It was as if I was the only person who witnessed this. As I drove away, I saw police cars with their lights on flying up and down the road still searching for her. Sometimes I wonder whatever happened to that naked woman. Story 55. I worked at a pizza place for a while in college, and for a while out of college. Same place. I delivered to this lingerie modeling business. It was always the same lady, and she would meet me at the front door in her skivvies. I delivered to an Asian massage parlor. I had to go to back, and this guy with a headset was at the door with some Asian women by his side. Definitely an odd vibe there. I know there's odder ones I can't remember, but there was this one woman who we were delivering to every day in this gated apartment building on the outskirts of downtown. When I first delivered to her, she had a rat's nest of hair, and her apartment smelled rancid. Like festering. She'd order like 5 orders of breadsticks and a bunch of soda. She was skinny as a rail, actually. We found out she was a model that had been arrested for shoplifting and who knows what. We had a running theory she was ordering food to appease whoever had control of her money because we don't think she ate anything. She was always pretty incoherent, probably pilled out. She normally had a pen to sign for a tip. One time she didn't have one, and I offered her to use mine. She never wanted to use our pens for some reason, but I told her to keep it. She tipped me $20 then and every from then on out. She didn't tip anyone else that much, which is funny. She always thanked me for the pen too. After ordering practically every day, she abruptly stopped and we never heard from her again. Story 56. Delivered for Jimmy John's during undergrad many years ago. Took a delivery to a La Quinta and the room ended up being in an isolated back corner of the hotel. Went to knock and noticed they had flipped the locking bar in front of the door. So I had to sort of hold the door handle and knock at the same time. I hear 2 voices say come in and could tell they were at the far end of the room. I cracked the door open and announced that their sandwiches were here and noticed they were in bed with the covers pulled up to their chins. They told me to come in and I immediately felt like something was ill off. I kind of hesitated and they told me that I better come in if I wanted to get paid, so I reluctantly went in. They proceeded to get out of bed, ass naked, and searched for their money in what I'll call a flirty, teasing way. Took a solid few minutes of that before they actually paid me and let me go. Later, when I was bored at work, I found a Craigslist ad for their services, haha. Also delivered to an escort, before which wasn't totally uncommon on its own. But once I delivered to her mid-performance and was incorporated into the routine. Story 57. Had a hefty order headed to the airport Hilton, so I assumed it was for a party or something. As soon as I walk in the lobby, it was full of furriers, which was damn odd, but not unheard of for that hotel. I've heard rumors about it before. My stony self says hi to a blue wolf and maybe a pink fox. I don't know, but I continue up towards the room. I knock on the door and this cute girl my age, 22 at the time, opens the door dressed in a vinyl crop top and matching miniskirt. She keeps the door closed, but enough to talk to me and started flirting. She even invited me back to her room after my shift. As I'm saying goodbye, she winks at me, turns around and shows me her foxtail, which I'll only say wasn't connected to her belt. I'm flabbergasted as she closes the door. I slowly turn to walk away, and the door swings back open and it's a 300-pound man standing in the hallway naked except a bandolier, and a gimp mask asking where the heck was his ranch. That story always stuck out, and the grossest one was at a local motel where the customer had horrible gangrenous lag, and the flesh was actively falling off and didn't seem to care. I can still remember the smell. You could smell it from the lobby. The sad part is that for the grossest deliveries, I have a couple close seconds. Story 58. Delivery driver here. Sometimes last year I was delivering pizza to a Halloween party. I wasn't expecting a party in the beginning of the afternoon, but whatever. The guy opening was like 6 feet 5 inches, 350 pounds, hairy as duck, and in a hot maid outfit. Of course, all his friends, and himself, though he tried not to, were laughing their asses off. I was somehow able to keep it professional, and when he closed the door, I started laughing too. Another time I had a delivery to an apartment with an intercom at the entrance. So I use it to call the client. Get no answer. Try again just in case. Get an answer and the guy opens the door. All right, he was slow, but whatever. I take the elevator, get to his door, and hear a girl moaning obnoxiously. I think maybe it's from another room, so I knock on the door. No answer. Knock again. Still no answer. So I call him on his phone. The moaning stops. He answers the phone. Then the door. The guy shows up with only sweatpants and hard as a rock. Delivery goes fine afterwards. But why would you get back to it if you know the delivery guy is coming? Anyway, reading the other comments, I guess I was lucky. Story 59. Not a delivery, but similar circumstances. Years ago, I stopped at a house to ask if an old car sitting in the backyard might be for sale. As I approached the door, I noticed only the screen door was closed. The inner door was open, and I had a full view of the kitchen. I was just about to knock when I see a male in his 20s laying face down on the kitchen floor, not moving. He was partially laying on a cordless phone, pre-cell phone days. A million things went through my mind. Is he end? Was he trying to call for help? I wasn't sure what to do, so I pounded on the door and yelled, "Hello?" Dude went from presumed dead to on his feet with a look of surprise and terror in about 2 seconds. He'd been there long enough that he had the floor tile pattern all down one side of his face and on one arm. I asked, "Are you okay?" To which he responded, "Oh yeah, man, I was just tired," and tried to play it off like nothing happened. After reassuring me several times that he was okay and didn't want medical response, I finally asked about the car. To this day, I still wonder how being tired equates to falling asleep on top of your phone in the middle of the kitchen floor. Pretty sure dude fainted or something, but I have no idea. Story 60. I used to deliver pizzas in a pretty small town when I was like 23 years old. I got an order during the day shift to a house a little out of town, but still within our boundary. When I arrived, I knocked on the door and heard someone say, "Come in." I generally tried to avoid these types of situations, so I pretended not to hear and knocked again, but got the same response. I opened the door and announced myself. The man that ordered pizza yelled at me that he had fallen in the bathroom and needed help. I walked back there, and sure enough, a rather large man with just shorts on fell, and I helped him back onto his wheelchair. He thanked me and said money was by the front of the door. I always thought that he called and ordered pizza to get help instead of calling the fire department or emergency services. But it wouldn't make sense because he had money at the door. So maybe he put money down, went to the bathroom and fell, then just waited for me to arrive, and it all worked out. I also once delivered to a house where 2 girls answered in nothing but a thong, so that was pretty cool. They even gave me a $5 tip, which was nice at the time. Story 61. Once during college, had a job delivering pizza for a popular restaurant. It wasn't very good pay, so I had to rely mostly on tips. One particular delivery stop, an older woman answered the door, intoxicated, and asked how much for the pizza. I told her the amount owed, and she asked if she can work some of the money off and winks at me. I politely declined and repeated the total amount, but she insisted I come in and wait while she grabbed her purse. So I walked in and waited by the door while she went into the back part of the house to grab the money. After about 5 minutes goes by, and she's not back yet, I holler out for her, asking if everything is okay. She replies and asks if I can come back and help her find her purse. Reluctantly, I set the pizza down and make my way back into the house. I turn the corner, and there in her room, the woman is lying on her bed in just her underwear. Before I can say anything, she says to come in and do whatever I want to her. I quickly turn around and left the house, leaving the pizzas behind. I ended up having to pay for the pizza myself because the manager didn't believe my story. I quit 2 weeks later. Story 62. This was during a pickup. When I was delivering for Uber, I got an order to pick up from CVS. I get in the building and look at the list, and it's mostly like Gatorade, candy, and a frozen pizza or two. But the last item on the list is a vibrating flashlight. Needless to say, it was awkward to have to ask the young girl at the register to get keys to unlock the case so she could bring it up to the front to ring me out. Had to take it to a barracks on an army base. The dude seemed pretty happy when I showed up with his order. Story 63. I'm on the wrong side of this, but the question provoked a memory. A friend of the family had something to drop off, and she did not want to just leave it on the porch, which sits right next to my window. I was doing the nasty and the pasty with my girlfriend at my parents' place while they were out. Pulled up at the bottom of the driveway was to our house and not our neighbors. The transition from ducking for the first time we had the house to ourselves that week to, oh crap, they are on our stairs was abysmal. Failing to quietly pretend we aren't there without giggling too much may have been my mistake, but I persisted with the plan of remaining in situ. She may have got an eyeful when looking between the Venetian blinds, thinking that I was just being rude and not coming to the door, but I was otherwise occupied. I did the right thing. I blocked the view of my wife with my paler eyes. I think it worked. She left after that. Thanks for the reminder. Story 64. Delivering pizza, and we got a call to deliver to a fairly rough part of town. I, female, was the only driver available, so the boss gave me his pistol to carry and told me to radio in when I got to the house, and then when I got back to the car. When the guy who ordered the pizza answered the door, his pants were undone, and he invited me inside. I declined very politely, handed him his pizza, and got out of there as quickly as I could. Most, if not all, local pizza joints won't even deliver to that side of town anymore. Even the college on that side of town is excluded from pizza delivery because of how often drivers were threatened. If you live east of a certain street, you have to order pickup or you don't get pizza. Story 65. I was once delivering a keg to bar in NYC. Popped down the basement chute and saw 2 guys sitting at tables with mirrors in front of them. Naturally, I just say, "Hey guys," to be pleasant and acknowledge them. Took me a few minutes to move stuff around and get the keg in the cooler, looking for empties, etc. The penny dropped, and it was a couple of drag performers getting ready. When I passed them on the way out, the wigs were on. "Have a great show, ladies." Gave me a chortle. Story 66. Many moons ago, I used to deliver for Ups in San Diego. I'm at a complex with a bunch of bungalows. I've got a box that has an address reading 333-1. I'm looking everywhere for it. I see 333 and 335, but no 333-1. I knock on 333 to ask if they know. Knock, knock. I hear some rustling and the door slowly opens to a wild scene. Opening the door is a tall, slim, older dude, 60s, with a white military special flat top. He's wearing a white tank top tucked into his unbuttoned and unzipped slacks. He looks like a drill sergeant straight out of the movies. I see some movement in the background, and spinning in an office chair is a little dude dressed up in a skimpy pink schoolgirl uniform sucking on a lollipop, just smiling and spinning. The guy opening the door grunts at me. I ask if he knows where the address is. He grunts again and shuts the door. I step away and laugh. What in the roleplay did I just interrupt? Story 67. I used to be a flower delivery driver. When I told people this, they would say, "Oh, that sounds like a fun job. Everyone must get excited to see you." Two things people forget about. One, I delivered to a lot of funerals. Not necessarily the worst, because the flowers tended to cheer people up. But when you deliver flowers to a baby's funeral a couple of times a month, it's not the most fun you can have at work. Two, people tend to send flowers to their significant other when they've truly ducked up. Case in point, one day, I delivered flowers to a house. I knock on the door, and after a few minutes, a woman opens the door to reveal a face that was just absolutely damn mangled. She looked like she'd been through 12 rounds of boxing and every punch thrown connected with her face. When she saw the flowers, her only question was a very timid, "Who are they from?" I replied, "I don't know, ma'am, I just deliver the flowers." She reluctantly took them and quickly shut the door. I didn't work at the flower shop much longer after that. Story 68. I deliver for Amazon, and some homes set up their garage door to be connected to Amazon. I show up to their house, and my work phone allows me to open their garage door, put the package inside, and then shut the garage door. People who set this up don't understand that you have now made your garage a potential public space. I was hitting the open garage door button on my phone, and it was kind of budging, but the door wouldn't fully move. I thought to myself, maybe it was stuck. After the fourth try, it opens, and I see this older man behind a car shirtless, trying to shut his garage door and wondering why it's opening. I thought this dude was just comfortable in his house. So I call out to him saying it's me and to let the garage door fully open. He laughs and forgot Amazon can open his garage door. He turns the corner around his car and he is not wearing anything. The confidence on this old-timer to just walk straight up to me. I got the smallest glimpse before I realized what was happening, and I just turned around, dropped the package on his trunk. I just noped out of there. Nope. Story 69. Working as a pizza delivery driver, I once had someone answer the door completely naked screaming for his boyfriend to come pay me. I've been chased by dogs and chickens. Once delivered to a house with a pet peacock running around. Once had a request to deliver food through a window and not knock because they didn't want the others in the house to know they had food. One time a lady screamed at me until I was in tears because her pizza was sliced into squares instead of triangles. The best tip I ever got delivering was a whole boat. Have never tested it on the water, and it's a bit of an eyesore on my property, but free boat and trailer, it's on. My last couple months living in California, I delivered Indian food, the Great India Cafe, to Justin Bieber's house. I didn't know it was his house until I Googled the address after I left. I knew a double-gated community and a 20-car garage was where someone with a lot of money or famous lived. That was 2013. The above stories all were in Texas between 2022. Story 70. I delivered some pizzas to a house, and the mom answered, took the food, and told me to come in because it was raining. She goes to the kitchen to get some money, and her daughter is having a piano lesson. They stop, and teacher gives me this snooty, less than look, so I say, "Sorry to interrupt, don't mind me. I play piano too, so I've been there." And the guy looks at me and scoffs and says, "Oh, really?" So I proceed to say, "Yeah, I know that song. Handle? Sarabanda from Sweet, no dot 11 comma, right?" And the dude does the blinking guy meme and goes, yeah, that's right. Like, how does this loser pizza guy know that?" So I said, "Yeah, it's a good one," and started whistling the melody, while the mom walked back giggling to herself and gave me a pretty nice tip. Story 71. I got a story. Worked for a popular fast sandwich delivery place in 2014. I pull up to a nice house in a nice subdivision at night. While walking up, I see these weird stick and yarn crosses hanging from a tree like from the Blair Witch Project. I knock, and a guy wearing these bunched-up golden pants with no shirt wielding a long sword answers. "You shouldn't be here," says the man wielding a sword in a bladed posture from behind his door. I nope TF out. While leaving, I see an orange taxi suspiciously parked. I get back to the store and tell my coworkers. Then the taxi pulls up and explains that his uncle is paranoid schizophrenic, and this is their way of checking up on him, sending a delivery guy to see if he opens the door and still alive. I got a $20 tip from him. Months later, I'm on the same street for another delivery, and I tell the customer about their neighbor and my story. The customer explains to me that the sword welder guy hid his lover in his basement. Story 72. Not a delivery driver, but my husband works with a company that utilizes fleets of drivers. My favorite story. A woman, who had clearly been on substances, jumped in the passenger side of a delivery guy's van and immediately pooped into her hands and then dropped the nuclear bomb on the floorboards of his van, but it got everywhere. That poor guy had to drive the van back to the warehouse after ditching the lady, and then some people helped get it cleaned up, but the smell. Story 73. When I was 19, I was a pizza delivery driver. I had a couple of weird deliveries, but this one really freaked me out. At the time, I'm one of the only girl delivery drivers at this place, and I was working the closing shift. We get a last-minute delivery and was not looking forward to it. When I get there, it was in the middle of nowhere, and the last part of this driveway is extremely loose sand. My little Honda Accord did not like it, so I immediately backed up to where the gravel was and walked the rest of the way. The guy was waiting on the porch, and when we were exchanging the money, I heard something rustling behind me but didn't see anything when I looked. When I turned back around, the guy was looking past me while shaking his head and making a kind of "no, don't" signal with his hands. I got out of there as quick as I could, but always wonder if it was nothing or if I escaped being murdered or something. Story 74. I was a driver for Domino's for a couple of years. Some other drivers may be able to confirm this, but you have a lot of regulars, and it's pretty rare to get someone you've never delivered to before. Well, I'm working one day, and one of those new deliveries comes up. We've never delivered to this house before. I get there, walk up to the door with her pizza, and as I'm going up the steps to her porch, she opens the door and stands there leaning against the door jamb. And she is stunning, like she could have been a model pretty. She acting flirtatious, and I'm just being polite and professional back. I give her the pizza, she gives me the money, I get in my car and go about my business. I'm about 2 blocks down the road when it hits me that she was wearing a baby doll tee, and nothing else. Story 75. Drew the short straw to deliver pizza to a well-known brothel. Was only 16 at the time. I knocked on the door and went into a small reception area, thought I would give them the pizzas there. But the women on the door motioned through another door into a lounge full of skimpily dressed women. They were actually all super nice. Story 76. About 10 years ago, I was delivering a bunch of pizzas to presumably an office pizza party. It was in an old but very fancy-looking building. The elevator opened into a beautiful front office. The walls and furniture were a dark mahogany. The ceilings were covered in decorative ceiling tiles. A huge oriental rug was on the floor. 2 big leather seats in front of a massive desk. It looked like a very expensive lawyer's office. The guy there told me they were going to the conference room and that he'd show me the way. We went through a door into a brightly lit white hallway. The first thing I see is a big glass display case of sex toy. The walls had big framed pictures of what looked like adult video covers. The contrast was startling and unexpected. Turns out, they were a startup making an app like Grindr. Story 77. Not a delivery driver, but the air conditioning at the larger summer sex broke, so a quick phone call was made. The HVAC repair guy knew exactly what he was walking into, kept his eyes on the work, and didn't look surprised or even blink. His assistant was about 20 years younger, early to mid-20s, and that guy's jaw was basically on the floor. He'd signed a consent form before entering the building, but he just stared as people popped out of the playroom to see what was going on. He had to be asked multiple times to pass tools up the ladder and couldn't focus, which eventually resulted in a gal wearing glitter and heels handing tools up to the HVAC guy. His assistant was just not coherent. When the AC was finally fixed, basically everyone came over to clap and cheer. The HVAC boss just grabbed his assistant's shoulder and dragged him out, still wide-eyed and smiling. Glitter Gal helped carry the ladder out to the foyer. Story 78. I worked in a small branch of a global hotel chain when I was 18, where the porter's overnight duties included room service delivery. One night, this pretty older chick and a guy on the larger side walk in and book a room. An hour later, they called down for room service, and I swear they ordered nearly everything on the menu. So much that I had to make 2 deliveries. First delivery was fine, nothing abnormal, but I apologized and said I'd be back up with the rest of the order in 5 minutes. I knock on the door for the second delivery. She opens the door and thanks me, takes the food, then closes the door. But not before I catch an eyeful off larger guy, naked, sitting on the chair. Story 79. I deliver furniture and mattresses. One day I was on a solo delivery with a queen-size mattress. We will also haul off your old mattress for free. I get into this woman's house, and she is late 70s, early 80s. I ask her if she would like for me to haul off her old mattress. She says yes. I go and pick up the mattress, and there is a huge, shiny silver sex toy laying on the box spring. I pretended not to notice it and just carried the mattress into the living room. But I saw her notice the sex toy out the corner of my eye. She snatched that idiot up so fast. I've been doing this job 5 years, and that's the only time it's happened. My boss has done it for 25 years and never seen that happen at all. Story 80. Delivering pizzas, and I get to the door. I ring the doorbell, and I hear shuffling and people shushing each other. Then a woman with only panties, a bra, and one of those silk see-through gowns peeks through the side window, walks out, and lets a sigh of relief turns her head and says, "You can come out, it's not my husband, it's the pizza guy." Then a dude walks out, slaps her ass, and said, Perfect, I was getting hungry. What's up, dude? I was so taken aback by what she said. I felt like she cheated on me with how devious she said that. They tipped me $50 to delete the order because it was under her husband's name, even though there was no way to do that, a fake. This was over 10 years ago. I arched the husband, found out, and end his life about 2 years later. Story 81. I was a bellman at a high-end hotel 15 or so years ago. An injured NHL player stayed at our hotel for several months while he recovered and played for the local farm team. He also had his Playboy model girlfriend stay over frequently. They were both awesome, always tipped great, let us drive his cool cars, knew us all by name, etc. One day I get called to the front desk to deliver some flowers to their room. So I run up, knowing I'm going to get at least a $20. Playboy model answers the door, completely naked. NHL player, also naked, says hello to me by my name. You bet your ass. I took a good look up and down. She grabs a 20 from the pile of bills they always have at the door and gives it to me. Almost felt guilty taking it. Best day ever as a 19-year-old in college. Story 82. Delivered pizza about 10 years ago. Once I knocked on a door with an order and had to wait a little longer than usual for someone to answer. A really cute blonde came to the door, face flushed, breathing really hard. But that part that had me laughing, after I got back in my car, was the fact her shirt was inside out and backwards. The image of her shirt tags just under her chin will never be forgotten. Story 83. Mine is not as bad as others, but I used to deliver mattresses. Part of the deal was we'd haul away the old one. Well, we delivered 3 new twin-size beds to a house, and they asked us to haul away the old ones. I used to not wear gloves because they would slip, so I barehand this old twin onto my shoulder, pressing it to the side of my face like normal. Turns out she had some bedwetters, and my face and hands were now pea-flavored. I sighed heavily and mentally counted down the days to quitting the job, which ended up being literal days later. Another time I delivered to an empty house. Door was unlocked. They left a note saying where they wanted the new stuff. Just unreal that they would let us in unsupervised. Story 84. Back when I was a silly 18 years old, I had a pizza order for a house a bit further away from most of my regular deliveries. Didn't think anything of it till I knocked on the door, and a woman, maybe in her 30s but still very gorgeous, answered wearing nothing but socks. I was quite shocked and just handed her the pizzas and stumbled off. As I'm walking past the front of the house, I glance through the front window and see another 2 women in exactly the same state. One looked in her 30s as well. Not as pretty as the first, and the second looked at most 19 years old. I left and couldn't shake the feeling I'd missed out on something. Found out they got banned from ordering delivery that week for doing the same thing to a manager. Story 85. I delivered stuff for Rent-A-Center in college. The very first delivery of this job was a washer, dryer to a house. I ring the doorbell and the daughter of the homeowner answers. She's my age, she's quite attractive, and she is wearing a towel and a smile, just out of the shower. She signed for the delivery and showed me where it was going to go, and I walked back to the truck thinking this was going to be a pretty decent job. Unfortunately, that was the highlight of that particular job, and it went downhill from there, fast. Turns out, folks who rent to own are not typically affluent. I've been to the bowels of Lincoln thanks to this job. I have seen living conditions that broke my heart, and I reported some folks to CPS. Story 86. I've only been in this position once in my life in the 80s, delivering food to a Muslim takeaway restaurant that pay in cash. After dropping the stock off, a worker directed me upstairs for the owner to pay cash. Knocking on the bedroom door, "Come in," was the answer as I walked in. A husband and wife in bed. In their surprise as well as myself, as I was not a man of their religion, she looked playful. He was horrified at seeing his wife not in full dress as of their religion. He emptied his wallet as quick as he could. I thanked him and said goodbye to both. Story 87. I delivered in Luxembourg for 1 year around 2017, and the amount of older women that are day drinking is pretty funny, and the fact that there are loads of people in Luxembourg that let their dogs and cats freely pee and crap inside their homes is crazy. Had plenty of fun with the day drinking housewives. The other houses were just disgusting messes. I could totally drop names and towns, like Remick, but Lux is so small. If I even mentioned what I delivered, it would give it away. Story 88. I was a driver for Amazon about 6 years ago now. I had a route out in BFE, and the driveways out there tend to be those mile-long dirt road types. I had a delivery at a house that was off of one of those driveways. Had swamp on both sides, yard covered in trees and plants. The whole shebang. I get up to the house and get to digging in the van for the specific couple of packages for this address. And behind me, I hear the very distinctive sound of a shotgun racking a shell. Turns out the guy was cool and just didn't know what a white unmarked van was doing on his property, but it still scared the crap out of me. Story 89. Back when I was younger, I delivered a pizza to a local trailer park. When I got to the house, I noticed it was emanating a sort of strange odor. When the lady answered the door, she invited me in. and when I stepped inside the door, I noticed the place had dog turds everywhere on her carpeted floors like landmines. She said she needed to go to the bedroom to get cash and proceeded to step barefoot with her heel in a fresh dog turd and almost slip. She took it in stride and kept going as if nothing had happened. It took everything in me to not gag and leave. She came back with the $20, and I got out of there as fast as humanly possible. Story 90. I used to work 2 jobs, one being a pizza delivery job after my morning job, so some days I was literally working 9 a.m. to about 1 a.m. on weekends. Needless to say, some nights I was just so tired and ready to go home, took a delivery to a house 11:45 p.m. A woman in her 30s will say, "Open the door in lingerie." Oopsie, you weren't supposed to see. Well, maybe we wanted you to see. Want to come join us? At that point, though, I was just so tired. It annoyed me, and I basically handed it off and left without a word. I wonder how I would have taken that if I wasn't ready to pass out into a coma nap. Story 91. I'm the customer. The postman brings me a package, and I was naked. I stay behind the door and just stick my head out. I'm aware that I had a window on my door, but normally you can't see anything through it. Yes, you don't see anything through it, but you can see the shadow clearly. My postal worker never looked me in the eyes again. Story 92. I used to deliver beds. We would bring the new one in, wrap up the old one and remove it. I've seen lots of stuff under beds, guns, substances, sex toys, etc. Went to deliver a bed to a high-end house. Parents not home. Teen brother and sister left to let us in. Teen daughter brings us up to the parents' room. We go to lift the old king size off the frame, and underneath are sex toys of all kinds. Story 93. I delivered pizza for a little while a few years back. 2 that stand out in my mind are: 1. I was delivering to someone in a hotel. They answered the door in nothing but sleep pants and had their banana hanging out of them. 2. This one is a little milder. I was delivering to one of the student apartments in town, and this chick was preparing for a night of escort. She had a pole set up in her living room, which was visible from the door, and asked for her change in $1 then asked how many $1 I had and if I could make change for a $20. Story 94. 25 years ago, I was working for the Brown Delivery Company. I would always volunteer for Saturday Air. It was super easy. Tons of driving and like 12 stops and almost always wealthy house. Cute white woman 40, cheerleader build, gardening out front. She was super excited to see me, grabbed package and went inside saying, "Wait here." Tips were occasional. Sony assumed she was grabbing a $5. Comes out 5 mins later in this tiny bikini and pranced. Jumped around for a few mins telling me she was leaving for Hawaii the next day and was hoping this would arrive in time before they left. It's still in the spank bank 25Y later. Story 95. I was delivering wine to a very fancy home, and they invited me into the foyer to drop everything off. Inside the small foyer were 2 ladies in their 50s, admiring about 100 photographs on the floor of themselves doing things in the nude. They didn't say much, but tipped me nicely and went back to what they were doing. Story 96. In the what the heck category, being a kid, I had a morning newspaper delivery route, then the usual go to school. One morning, still dark, but the robins making a racket, I come across a large pool of what in the streetlight was some red liquid. A trail of large drops led off the way I was going, so I followed. Got a block and a half, and there was another puddle. Turns out, a guy had been attacked by someone. Gotten up and staggered to where someone would see him and call an ambulance. This guy lived, but several others that had been attacked weren't so lucky. Story 97. I used to deliver pizza when I graduated high school. I delivered to a dorm room at a local college, and it was 4 smoke shows that answered the door. All 4 of them were completely naked. They gave me the best tip I've ever received. Story 98. Was delivering pizza in college, and this super drunk girl answers in a revealing t-shirt and panties. Her dog runs out and she runs to catch him. She apologizes, just say, "Oh, don't worry, you're fine," when looks up at me and winks, saying, "That's exactly what I'd say in your situation too," and starts turning up the drunken flirting. I hear a very quiet hi mega from the house. One of the drivers I worked with was there. They were partying and it was her drunk friend. It's a fond memory of mine. Story 99. I was making a delivery in a decent neighborhood. I parked and looked to my right and saw 2 goat statues on the roof of someone's car. I thought it was weird, but whatever. I deliver the food and go back to my car. As I start to drive off, the 2 goats stood up and walked around on the roof of the car. I busted out laughing because I just never expected it. I thought they were fake. You'd expect goats in the country, not a neighborhood with $200,000 houses. Story 100. I was a 13-year-old kid delivering papers and got stopped by one of my customers, an old guy that was doing yard work. I think he was talking to me as an excuse to quit working. About 10 minutes later, eternity as a kid, I asked him if he wants his paper. He said no, just throw it on the porch. I toss it up there and hit his glass storm window and it shatters. All I could do was apologize, thinking of all the ways I'm going to have to pay for this. He said, "It's okay, I'll take care of it. Have a good day." I awkwardly wrote off. Story 101. During pandemic and universal no-contact deliveries, I had multiple people request that I yell various movie lines. We had a This is Sparta, various Animal House lines, a whole variety. At least one Napoleon Dynamite. I don't remember the rest. I'm pretty sure it was some sort of Insta challenge. Whatever, it was fun, and I probably made a couple hundred off humoring them, all told. The other drivers at the shop were lame. I was probably the oldest of them by 15 years or more. They took themselves too seriously. A lot of those customers remember me now that I DoorDash, and we trade hellos at the store sometimes. Story 102. I used to deliver food to this house daily, sometimes even multiple times a day. One day, I had already been once. The husband answered, "Normal delivery." The second time, though, the wife answered. She was wearing a long dress. It had been raining earlier, so there was still water by the door. She slipped and fell. She wasn't wearing anything underneath. I saw everything. The husband ran to help her up and got it all situated. He said she had been taking meds because she was sick. As I was about to leave, he asked if we were hiring. I told him no. They never ordered again. Story 103. Not a delivery driver anymore, but I think my funniest one was I was delivering groceries and this house has the door open so you can still see through the screen door. Pre-pandemic. So I bring the groceries up and knock on the door. Woman comes out into view and she's in her underwear and just looks at me, looks down and goes, "Damn it," and walks away. Her husband came to the door for the groceries and just had normal conversation with me like that didn't even happen. Story 104. Pizza delivery driver, pre-apps. I pulled up to a building covered with crime scene tape with CSI cars out front. Cops saw me and asked if I was delivering to that building. I told them I was, but I could call the customer to come down. They told me no worries. The incident was confined to the apartment downstairs, and they lifted the tape for me to go upstairs. I didn't dare to look, but I caught a glimpse of numerous evidence markers and a lot of people with biohazard clothes on. Never found out what happened. Wasn't even in the news. Story 105. This one isn't delivery per se, but I was a paperboy a long time ago, and when trying to collect a bill, this man came out on his porch and proceeded to tell me he knew karate. Okay, cool. I need my $7. He said he could kill me with one punch. I'm sure you could. I need my money. He went on to karate chop a front porch post and break his hand. His wife came out immediately and paid me. As I got to the next house, I heard a crash. His front porch roof caved in. Story 106. I used to deliver pizza to this couple who had special needs. They were nice, but we all hated when that address came up in the system. Most of the time when we arrived, the wife was on the armchair, straight in view from the doorway, with her bush showing. It was not a pleasant sight. The husband always paid in exact change, down to the penny as well. No tip and a gross bush means their names are still fresh in my mind over 20 years later. Story 107. I used to be a delivery driver for FedEx, ran into a lot of weird stuff, dropped off parcels to a couple who just finished having sex. They answered the door panting and sweaty and hair messy. Older woman answering the door with just a blouse on. She wasn't a MILF. Anything but she wanted me to come inside her place while I finished delivering. Random stuff like that was bizarre, but funny in the same way. Story 108. I was a delivery driver for a year and a half and still have not figured why a couple bought 10 kilograms of oranges per week. Quite a few years have gone by, and I still wonder what the hell they wanted so many oranges for. Another story is driving to a flat in a town 45 minutes or so away from my city and delivering to a totally naked 80-years-old man. I think I'll never forget that experience. Story 109. I worked at a hotel years ago during Leather Fest in Denver. Delivered food to one of the conference rooms and walked in on a guy with his ball sack nailed to a wooden post and someone butterflying the sack. I just left food on a table and slowly back out of the room. Story 110. Walking back to the car, hear a knock on a window, so I turn around to the house and get flashed by a teenage girl. She immediately ducked behind a couch or chair, and I know there were several people in the house based on the noise, so I always assumed she was dared. In case anyone wants to ask one of those questions, I was 25 at the time and prefer a life outside of prison. Story 111. Delivered a pizza and salad to a hotel room. Knocked a few times, and finally a guy answered kind of hunched of hiding a hard-on, and a lady was in the bed kind of hiding herself. Order was $15, 25 years ago. I looked at dude, looked at his lady while handing him food, and when I looked back at him, he handed me a $50 and shut the door in 13 milliseconds. Story 112. More of a cool thing, but I delivered a ham to a rural house one time, and that answered was cool and really wanted to show me a natural pool. He just finished building himself. He was really proud of it, and it was actually really cool, so we hung out and chatted a hit before I continued with the route. Story 113. I move vending machines, and we were once moving two into the break room of a law firm. The entire time, about 45 minutes. This higher-up was berating his subordinate for not giving him something on time while the guy swore he did. The door was open, so the entire place could hear this. As we were leaving, the subordinate flipped something over that was on the higher-up's desk the entire time and said, "You mean this document?" Story 114. I used to deliver pizzas. There was this house where the woman would always order a white pizza and a 20 ounces Diet Coke. She was a smoke show. She would always answer the door in a barely there towel. She would always tip really well. She was my favorite customer. Story 115, delivering a parcel to a really posh house with a long, winding driveway. Can see a couple standing out the front as I'm heading up. The woman drops her bottoms, squats, and does a wee on the drive right outside the front door. Very strange. Story 116, a sexy woman walking around her kitchen in her bra. The delivery notes said, rear door, so I walked to her backyard. The windows were open, so I could see inside. She definitely did not expect to see anyone in the backyard. We made eye contact. I lifted the package so she could see what I was doing. Then she nodded and walked out of kitchen. Story 117. My husband used to deliver for FedEx and delivered to what he clocked as a happy ending massage parlor. A few months later, the parlor gets busted for the happy endings. Story 118. Back in high school, I delivered for Pizza Hut. I regularly had interesting offers of tips, everything from come on in and have a beer, to shots of tequila, weed, CAK, one time even a threesome. Of course, I was still a kid and never once accepted any tip besides cash. Yes, I was an idiot. Story 119. Had a group of girls ask if they get the pizza for free if they showed me their tits. Another lady answered the door in pink lacy lingerie and had a banging body. She acted normal, although I know she noticed my shock and eyes darting around. I was only ever 18 when this all happened to me, though. Story 120. Worked at Domino's. Delivery was for an apartment facing a major road. Park at the side of the building, walk up, and press to the window next to the door is the back of a naked lady. I make eye contact with the man that's got her in this position, take the pizza and put it on a table they had outside and left. At least I got tipped $10.